U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says good progress has been made in discussions of a draft U.S. plan to end the war in Ukraine.
We have a very good work product that was already built on a foundation of input from all the relative parties involved here, and we were able to go through some of those items now, point by point, and I think we've made good progress. Our teams have now gone to their rooms as we're working on some of the suggestions that were proffered to us. So we're working through making some changes, some adjustments, in the hopes of furthering narrowing the differences and getting closer to something that both Ukraine and obviously the United States are very comfortable with. Obviously, this will ultimately have to be signed off by our presidents, although I feel very comfortable about that happening, given the progress we've made.
Rubio met with a Ukrainian delegation in Geneva, hashing out key issues in a U.S.-backed proposal for peace in Ukraine. He's calling this probably the best meeting the parties have had in this entire process. The 28-point peace plan calls on Ukraine to cede territory to Russia, accept limits to its military, and renounce a push to join NATO. It came about after a meeting between U.S. and Russian officials in Miami last month. However, the plan has been received with criticism by Ukraine and its allies. Still, Ukraine says today's talks are going well.
We have very good progress, and we are moving forward to the just and lasting peace. Ukrainian people deserve and want this peace more than anyone in this planet. We thank our big friends, United States and personal President Trump and his team to their commitment to bring this peace. And we will continue to work today, as Secretary said. We will be working and in coming days to join proposals.
U.S. President Donald Trump taking to social media today, saying in part that he inherited a war that never should have happened. He goes on to say Ukraine's leadership has, quote, expressed zero gratitude for our efforts, and Europe continues to buy oil from Russia. And after Trump's post, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky taking to social media to say his country is grateful to the U.S. and President Donald Trump, also thanking everyone in Europe, the G7, and in the G20. Zelensky says he also spoke with Canada's Prime Minister earlier today, calling that discussion useful.
We like point number one. Ukraine is a sovereign nation. Okay, that was a good start. There are a host of other issues which are going to be fed back directly and literally are being fed back today in conversations amongst the national security advisors. A summary or a comprehensive one-stop shop feedback to U.S. authorities and the President on behalf of the Coalition of the Willing.
And joining me now is retired Major General Scott Clancy, former Director of Operations for NORAD. Major General, welcome.
Thank you.
So you heard Secretary of State Marco Rubio there, as well as Ukraine's chief negotiator, saying that talks have been going well. Rubio is saying that good progress has been made. This all comes after Western leaders, including Mark Carney, said that the U.S. peace plan needs work. So your take on these comments that's been made, do you think that the U.S. is signaling that it's willing to make significant changes to this U.S. peace plan?
Short answer, no. I think Marco Rubio is saying what he's saying because he's presenting the plan to Ukraine, and Ukraine's nodding their heads and saying, I'm not really sure. And they're using good diplomatic language to say that territorial concessions are just that, concessions, and what concessions are being made by Russia. But they're not going to say that publicly at a news conference because they are also managing the ire and ego of the President of the United States. So this is where the United States and Russia, but especially the United States, have placed Ukraine into a little box with this 28-point peace plan. Either agree to it or, we're not going to be your partner anymore, which is why President Zelensky said what he said, that they have to choose between a loss of dignity and a loss of a partner.
Do you believe there is a risk that the U.S. could rescind its support for Ukraine if these talks do not go well today?
Well, absolutely. And that's why I think that Ukraine is being very cautious with their language. And they're saying that we're going to work on each portion of the plan. What we don't know here, I mean, we can talk about the specific elements of the plan, but in the end, this is territorial integrity and, lots of things into the future, including security guarantees that are questionable, playing off against at least ceasing the fighting for now. For Ukrainians, and you heard the Ukrainian delegation head saying very clearly, nobody wants this lasting and just peace any more than Ukrainians. We can't underestimate how much just stopping the fighting means to them. But the question is going to be how they manage that going forward. So I think that they're going to use solid diplomatic terms and negotiations here and be committed to the long-term peace process. That's what's going to garner them at least the continued support of the United States.
What would the loss of support from the United States mean for Ukraine?
So, I mean, this is where, Prime Minister Carney's comments, but also the security advisors that are there in Geneva from Germany, the UK, France, and the EU come into question. I've been very vocal about this. I think that we're at a watershed moment here with respect to not just the Western powers in the United States, but NATO as a whole. We're either going to have to go all in on Ukraine and defend it as Western allies, or we're going to have to watch it come under the control and the sphere of Russia. I think that that's the end state. And this peace accord is just an indication from the United States that they're not willing to go to war over Ukraine. The question then that brings into next is those security guarantees that are part of the peace plan. If we lack credibility in the West now to defend Ukraine against Russian aggression, what would change at any point in time in the future, especially after a peace has already been achieved? It seems implausible to me.
Such an interesting discussion. Thank you very much for your time, Major General.
Thank you very much for having me.
That is retired Major General Scott Clancy, former Director of Operations for NORAD.